With the Tampa Bay Lightning losing in 5 to the Florida Panthers, this might be the end of the Tampa Steven Stamkos era. Being a UFA this offseason, it seems pretty likely that Stamkos will test the open market, and pretty likely he'll end up leaving too. But if Steven Stamkos were to leave Tampa in free agency, what kind of contract could he end up getting? Where could he end up signing? Well, today we're going to be breaking down the potential contract and the teams that could be involved in signing him, so make sure you watch till the end for all of that, and hit that subscribe button as well for all the trainer content all throughout the offseason, because y'all won't want to miss a thing. Now, we've Tampa Bay's loss to the Florida Panthers. We've gotten a lot of coverage recently about Stamkos' future in Tampa Bay and how likely he is to stay, and right now, it isn't looking too great. Now, before we get into all the trade rumors and potential destinations for Stamkos, I first wanted to share with you guys my picks on Sleeper Fantasy today. We got 4 different NHL games, and I just wanted to share my picks with you guys. 3 different picks here. First things first, Vladimir more than 0.5 points. He has been unreal versus Winnipeg in this series. I also got Jake Guentzel more than 0.5 assists versus the Islanders. He's been consistent in that lately, and I think will be a big reason why the Canes go on to the second round tonight. I also got JT Miller more than 0.5 points versus the Preds. He has been fantastic in this series. I think he's going to continue that dominance. $10 down to win 30, and if you guys want to make your own NHL picks just like me, you can go in the description, click on the link, and sign up to Sleeper Fantasy. Available in the US and Canada as well, in every province besides Ontario. Just use code GRAV and you'll get up to a $500 match. If you put $20 in, you'll get 20 free bucks in Sleeper. Now is a great time to get started, and I highly recommend it. Now let's talk about Steven Stamkos' future. Of course, a long time ago, all the way back in 2016, was the first Stamkos free agent frenzy, where he ultimately re-signed with the Tampa Bay Lightning in the end, signing a mega extension, and now he's back in the same spot. The difference is, though, now is that Steven Stamkos has given everything he could have to Tampa Bay. 2 Stanley Cups, a plethora of playoff wins, and so much playoff success. Now, at the tail end of his career, and Tampa Bay potentially going in a different direction, things could get contentious. Especially when you consider there's already been some tension. All the way back in September, Lightning captain Steven Stamkos disappointed about the lack of discussions about a new contract. And that was at the beginning of the year, how Tampa wasn't really talking to him about a contract extension, wasn't really having any negotiations. And especially if you've been a face of the franchise like Stamkos has for so long, I could see why you'd be upset. And as Steven Stamkos says, to be honest, I'm disappointed in the lack of talk in that regard. It was something that I expressed at the end of last year that I wanted to get something done before training camp started. And again, this was made in September. We're now a season ahead, with the season over for Tampa Bay, and they still haven't decided on anything. And with how Stamkos looked at the end of that last game versus Florida, it really felt like he knew that his time in Tampa Bay could be coming to an end, or at least that was a possibility in his mind. It should be, especially since he has no contract upcoming here. In a recent Athletic article, they also detailed this whole situation and talked about a quote from Julien BriseBois saying, "After the season, we're going to sit down and evaluate where we are as a team, where Steven Stamkos is, and see how we can make those parts come together." But as they say, what makes the situation fascinating is that if Tampa Bay goes deeper in the playoffs, it may make more of an argument to keep Stamkos. If it becomes a second straight one-and-done postseason, the Lightning may be facing an unthinkable decision. As was detailed in the article, Julien BriseBois is an absolute winner through and through, and will do whatever it takes to make his team better. And there is an argument in ways that maybe long-term, Steven Stamkos' likely major contract might keep Tampa from being this major contender. I mean, we've already seen them completely depleted depth-wise over the past couple of years, and this year was a great example of that. You just look up and down the lineup, and you got Mitchell Chaffee as a third-line player on this team. On the defense, you got Emil Lilleberg and Maxwell Crozier on the bottom pair, and these are players that are likely AHL guys, not guys that will be sustainable pieces of the roster, and that's just been the casualties of the cap they have had to work with. But that's with Steven Stamkos on the roster. That's with him already being a major part of the cap space scenario. And in Tampa Bay's case, you either choose to keep Stamkos, keep the leader of your franchise, and keep going in that direction, or you could get rid of that cap, have a lot more space to work with, and likely become a much more balanced team. But how can you really say no to Steven Stamkos right now? The captain, the leader, the franchise face, and he's not even really regressing that much. You can see 80-plus point seasons in back-to-back years, and 106-point season just 3 seasons ago, and you can see what he's been able to do in the playoffs this year. He was carrying Tampa. While players like Kucherov weren't really all there, Stamkos had 5 goals, 6 points in 5 games. He was the heartbeat of Tampa Bay's offense and was one of the main reasons that was even a series in the first place. The problem becomes is that Tampa might not have a choice at all. You look at their offseason outlook and what they have going in the future, and they have $11.7 million in offseason cap space to work with. And you got a lot of UFAs outside of Stamkos, and they'll likely not re-sign a bunch of those like Dumba, like Motts and Don and Fleury, some depth that will end up being let go. But if you do re-sign Steven Stamkos, unless he takes a notable pay decrease, you're pretty much going to be strapped once again. And that's again with a lot of UFAs that were pretty big parts of the team not being re-signed, and even worse depth than what they had this year. If you do go down the Steven Stamkos route, you'd have about $3 million, most likely, maybe not even that, to be able to re-sign other guys, and you'd have to rely on a lot of younger players that I'm not sure are quite ready. Maxim Groshev could be a guy that fits into the lineup, but he's a solid AHL player, but hasn't quite made that major adjustment yet. You also got Dylan Duke, who maybe could be on the roster too, but personally, I'd give him another year of AHL seasoning to really do well. I think he could be fine at the NHL level, but again, you'd be rushing guys that I don't think are quite ready, and I don't think Tampa's prospect pool is particularly good enough to rely on the young guys to supplement that talent. And just like Alex Killorn, Ross Colton, Andrei Palat in the past, Steven Stamkos might just have to be a cap casualty. It's a much different situation with Stamkos because he is that face of the franchise. But if Brisebois is trying to make this a better overall team, trying to make it a better depth squad, then they need cap space to be able to do that. They need to have some type of NHL talent there. And Stamkos's cap hit, especially if he were to take a raise, you'd have no options left. And especially with what Tampa has done in the past, making some tough decisions, letting Stamkos go would be the biggest one, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. Now, the thing is, if Steven Stamkos were to leave Tampa, especially to a place with a much worse tax situation, then I do think we'd see him get a pretty good raise. He makes $8.5 million on this last deal, but I think we could see him get maybe to the maybe $9.5 million range, depending on the team. I mean, the contract could be pretty comparable to Joe Pavelski's, where, of course, in these twilight years, having a franchise face leave the team, going to a different team for maybe around a 3-year deal. I think Stamkos will definitely get paid a lot more than Pavelski did, but still, similar situations, and I could see Stamkos signing a similar deal. Now, even though that cap hit would likely limit the teams available, I mean, this is Steven Stamkos we're talking about. Everybody is going to want to bring in a proven winner, somebody like this that has been there, that has done that, has been a franchise captain face, and the sweepstakes are going to be pretty large. Now, today I'm going to share 6 different teams that I think make the most sense for Steven Stamkos, obviously besides the Tampa Bay Lightning, fits that I think could really work for Stammer in the end. If we're talking about younger teams that I think could be a pretty good fit, I think the Anaheim Ducks could be interesting. Swimming in cap space, the Ducks could have a massive offseason. To me, it just depends on how much they want to add to that top 6. It's pretty established with a lot of the younger forwards they have, but this is a reason why I could see them wanting Stamkos for the versatility, having him as a center or a winger. You could put him in any position possible. I do think if the Ducks win the draft lottery and they get Celebrini, I think Stamkos is a lot less likely, but if they were to take a D perhaps, I think, again, if we're talking about the Pavelski type of signing, or they sign him for a 3-year deal, bring in some leadership, bring in a veteran presence, a player like Stamkos would be brilliant. You could have him along Killorn as well. A lot of options there for Anaheim to work with, but I think it could work out pretty well. This will also have to depend on Stamkos's appetite for a rebuilding team, because I'm not sure if the Ducks will be quite there yet, but if they do add Stamkos, who knows? Maybe they're a team that can jump up in the standings like a team like the Canucks did this year. Next up at number 2, we go on to one of the more obvious ones in the Boston Bruins, and this would suck if you're a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, but in terms of fit and in terms of contending teams, the Bruins are one of the better fits out there. Positionally, Stamkos has an obvious place in the Bruins system and could immediately be their first line center, but even be a wing if he wanted to. And in terms of cap space, the Bruins actually have $23 million in cap space to work with this year. Now, if they do sign DeBrusk and Swayman, that'll probably eat up around $10 million or so of that, but still, they'd have a lot left over to bring on a player like Stamkos and keep the roster they have already intact. And wouldn't it be classic Boston Bruins to have Bergeron and Krejci leave just a year later to just get Steven Stamkos, because why not? Now at number 3, a fit that I would absolutely love to see, that is the Detroit Red Wings. Now there might have to be some tinkering that happens here, or maybe not. Maybe you could just put him on the same exact position that Patrick Kane was in and just sign Stamkos instead. I mean, Kane was obviously a massive part of Detroit's run and a lot of success that they did have in that second half, but maybe they're able to replace Kane with Stamkos, especially since it seems like Kane doesn't really want to stay in Detroit, but bringing on a presence like Stamkos would be massive for them, and I think put them even more as favorites to jump into the playoffs next year. And the Red Wings have even more cap space than the Bruins this year, $29 million to work with, so there would be some space to bring on even more free agents. I don't even have to mention the Steve Yzerman connection and just how much he loves to sign free agents. It would be perfect. Now, this one might be a little bit more out there, but at number 4, I have Utah HC. I'm just going to call him Utah HC as of right now, but I think in terms of team fit and a team that could use a presence like that, I think Utah would be in an excellent position to give him ice time, but also give him an up-and-coming team to really mold. And you look at the players they have already in Keller and Cooley and Schmaltz and Guenther, there's so many options there, and I would be not really surprised if they didn't want to tinker with those guys and give them less ice time because of it, but we've already heard a lot about how they want to make a big splash, how owner Ryan Smith wants to make big moves this offseason and make this a competitive team. Well, they have the most cap space in the entire league this offseason, and they would have more than enough to throw the bag at Steven Stamkos, bring in a proven winner. And for a team like that that doesn't have a lot of that, Stamkos would be perfect for the locker room and exactly what they need, especially to start a new franchise out. $40 million in cap space. That's how much they had to get Steven Stamkos, and I think it could be enough. We'll see. Going on to maybe a more safe pick, and I think that's the Nashville Predators at number 5. They're a team that has already gone big game hunting recently in Ryan O'Reilly last offseason. We could see them going for another veteran centerman, and I think he'd be pretty perfect in that position, especially with Stamkos' presence and how much of a change Ryan O'Reilly was for the culture in that locker room. I could see them going for the exact same type of presence and addition there in Steven Stamkos, and he would be a big one onto that forward group, would give players like Philip Forsberg finally some more offensive juice. And even though I think Nashville has a lot of changes they could make in this offseason, and having about $19 million in cap space isn't a crazy amount, Stamkos could be a pretty interesting ad and would definitely be a massive one for them. I mean, the amount of jerseys he would sell, it'd be ludicrous. Now, before I get into my last team for Steven Stamkos, let me just say this is out there. I know. This is a team I think would be, I mean, the NHL would implode if this actually were to happen. But to me, for the next spot at number 6, I have the Florida Panthers. Now, here's the thing. The Panthers have about $20 million in projected cap space this offseason. That is, though, with the knowledge that Sam Reinhart, of course, is a UFA. But if Reinhart is asking a little bit too much, if he's going out of this world, $10.5+ million, if he's really strangling Florida, what if they just went to Steven Stamkos instead, just brought him onto that first line and made do? I mean, I could see a situation where the Florida Panthers just steal Steven Stamkos. It would be close, of course, to home. It would still be in the same state, so you could work off that, and it wouldn't be that much of an adjustment. And in Stamkos' case, it would probably be the best team to go to. I'm just saying, it could work out. I think it would depend on Reinhart not re-signing, but maybe they go for Stamkos as a second plan. But no matter what, the Steven Stamkos sweepstakes are going to be one to watch, just like they were last time. Even though he ended up re-signing with Tampa, there was the whole controversy surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs, and if he was gonna sign there. I don't see him signing with Toronto, by the way. I don't really see that happening whatsoever. But this time around, I think we'll see a lot of teams going after him, especially if he were to hit that open market. It's gonna be a big one, folks, so get your popcorn ready. I want to know in the comments down below as well, what do you guys think of this whole Steven Stamkos situation? Do you see him re-signing in Tampa Bay in the end? Do you see him going to some other team? And what do you think of my teams that could be in the mix? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And do you see your favorite team being in the mix for Stamkos? I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell if you guys haven't already. And if you guys enjoyed the video today, of course, make sure to share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online to see if they could get Steven Stamkos in the end. And click on this card for all the Trainer content right in one playlist for you to binge at your heart's content. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Appreciate all the support, y'all. And I will see you in the next one. Have a great hockey day, and goodbye.